Kia ora, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to Lincoln University. Welcome to Link Innovation. I see some new faces. Welcome. I see some regulars. Welcome as well. This is part of our Vibe series, where we basically talk about a subject and we do it with a little bit of a drink and a nibble, and it becomes like a little bit like a kitchen table discussion. So before I'm going to introduce Ange, I will run through a couple of health and safety. And of course, the people that have heard me do this many times, they think, oh, that's the broken record, but that's what I remember. Emergency exits. In the case of an emergency, the door that you came into through the workshop, but also in the back, there are emergency exits. We do not expect any fire drills today or emergency drills. So if the alarm goes, it is the real deal. I think Joe is the one that runs the fastest. So we'll follow Joe, right? And she will bring us out to a safe place, which is out here in front of the grass between us and Lincoln Agritech. Toilets are to the left over there. And you figured out that we are serving some refreshments. And some of these refreshments contain alcohol. We ask you please to remember that the people that are sitting at home waiting for you to come home this evening want you home safe. So please drink responsibly. Link Innovation basically does a couple of things. We're a full business unit of Lincoln University, and we basically pride ourselves in connecting people. And this is one of the examples that we actually bring people together and make sure that these people start to talk to each other, because then we invite these wonderful speakers that come up with a topic that intrigues us, and then we start to talk. We are convinced that these discussions will actually lead to collaborations, because what is better than actually work with people that are passionate about the same topic that you are? And then by actually working together and collaborating together, we are truly believers that that's what real innovation takes place, so that at that moment in time, we can push New Zealand forward. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Ange from Farm Salus. I'll pronounce that correctly. And Ange has done a master's at Massey University, and the cool thing is that she went through the Kellogg leadership program as well. And so we just were comparing notes. I am honored to say that I deliver into that program as well. But like, yeah, when Ange graduated, I wasn't even in New Zealand. So yeah, so we didn't know each other, but I feel that we are connected. So I'll give the floor to you. Thank you.
This might be a little wee bit of pocket banana too, so I know who was in the room. How many people here work at Lincoln? Okay, around about a third. How many people are here from industry? Awesome. What kind of industries are you from?
We're from dairy industry.
Okay, it's cool. How many people here are students? Oh, fantastic. Any other researchers in the room? Who does research? Fantastic. That's cool. Thank you. So I worked for Beef and Lamb since 2018. Farm Salus is actually the name of the product that we're going to be talking about. And from a sheep and beef farming background, I have worked in the dairy industry, which has been really good as well. And through education, I guess, came to learn a lot about how to break the line. So the research that we talk about in this is not research to write reports and things, it's really researching to innovate, which was really important in this program. So I really want to acknowledge in here too, I had a colleague, Dr. Catherine Dixon, who is absolutely fundamental in this work. Her and her husband owned a company called Nature Positive, and she's based in Dunedin. And we also had a lot of people who helped us do a lot of interview work as well. And so through all of the people that have helped us with that, I just really need to acknowledge this is not my work. This was genuinely a whole bunch of people in the background who were part of what we did. So this Farm Salus product came from a program called Hill Country Futures. It was an $8.1 million program, which was co-funded by Beef and Lamb, who ran the program. PGG Rights and Seeds, Seed Ports, who I know have rebranded, but it was really hard to get their branding onto here. And a major partner of this was MB as well. It had 4 research themes. The week that we're talking about tonight was one of them. So we didn't spend $8.1 million just on this research. And the vision for the whole program was around future-proofing the profitability, sustainability and well-being of New Zealand's hill country farmers, their farm systems, the environment and rural communities. So it was a really great, big, huge, fat, hairy goal that we had. And our work was also a finalist last year in the Primary Industries Awards for team collaboration. So that was really good acknowledgement for the program. The work that we did had a few objectives in here. One of them was to create a hill country resilience evaluation system, which was a really big mouthful. We needed to understand the views and concerns of farmers and stakeholders. So there was quite a bit of breadth in the people that we talked to. There was lots of data collection. We interviewed around 300 people, which included 169 farmers. And for anybody involved in qualitative research, that is a stonkingly huge amount of people. It's a whole heap of data. And we really wanted to find out from people what resilience meant to them. And at the end of it, our milestone was to create a tool to help monitor and measure resilience. So I came into this a little bit later. I was actually interviewed as part of the stakeholder group for this work. And through those conversations, and because I worked for Beef and Lamb, ended up becoming a big part of this piece of work here. So hearing many points of view, those nearly 300 people that we talked to, farmers are in the middle here, and they were in the middle really purposely. The 16 Beef and Lamb assistants were people who were directors of Beef and Lamb through to senior leaders and people who worked in a farmer-facing role. And then there were 39 service providers in there and also 14 policy analysts and governors. And those people came from anywhere from regional and district councils through to people in central government. So really a big breadth of people in there. And then the 60 observers and influencers were people who worked in research, universities and media. So a really, really big, broad number of people that we talked to. Are there any questions so far? Fantastic. So after those 300 odd interviews, we had to go and create a tool. And so the first bit of line breaking sort of thinking that we had was that we could go and produce something like this. This was actually our first iteration of what we came up with. But what we did do through our analysis is that we figured that there wasn't a binary meaning of, you know, either resilient or you're not. So we started to figure out quite early on that really resilience and well-being was something that we had to learn to unbundle. So that was like a bit of a key insight for us really. And so with that, we strode ahead and we developed our first sort of like tool that we had to come in and create. We thought about resilience in terms of people having to have a healthy business, that your farm system had to be healthy. So that means that, you know, your animals are healthy and, you know, your pasture and your water and all those sorts of things, but you had to be healthy as well. So not just your physical health, but also your mental health. From there, we found that we could create some, we found examples of different themes in there. Those were pretty easy to do. So those are the examples that we came up with. For each of those, we found that we could create 3 or 4 indicators, pretty simple. And then from there, we could create another set of metrics from there. So these were really fertile, super fertile, and they grew really, really quickly. We took all of that work out to people and tested it with them. And if I could spell, that's probably what the reaction was. You know, nobody really wanted it, but we thought we were still onto something with this piece of work here. Because we decided that we were going to use different kind of reasoning in this kind of work, it gave us the opportunity to say, well, okay, that's great. Let's get really good feedback on what people actually do want and what's going to be usable for them. So one of the things that we went back to were the 3 really big key insights from the work. So we called these big meta insights. The first one is that everybody wanted to be understood. So this knowledge nest back here, it didn't matter who we talked to, everybody in there really felt like they were a little bit misunderstood. policy people, for instance, who are really saying, like, people that are out on the land don't realise how much pressure we're under. We've got to change, at pace, and we've got to change a lot of things. Farmers, on the other hand, were saying people don't understand what it's like if they don't come from the land. If you're in a city, it's all very well to sit in an office, but they don't realise if you want us to change these things, we've got to change all these other things around us. And so we'd love to do all that stuff, but at the moment we can't afford to, or there's all these different things that are getting in the way. So that was the first thing. The second insight was that people really wanted to be able to tell their stories. And now that we've done more work on it, it's not even stories, it's more, we want everybody to be able to understand our different bits of context. And from that, we were able to go back and look at this piece of work here again. We realised that we had to go and put that in the box. And we also realised that healthy farm business stuff, that's all of the work that people in Dairy NZ and our economic services inside Beef and Lamb, they already do a lot of that work. The healthy farm system stuff, that's already been taken care of by a lot of people who work in regional councils and the Ministry of the Environment. And the healthy farmer, that's stuff that's been taken care of somebody, I hope. But, there was a lot in there that was already being taken care of. But what we really came to see in here was that there wasn't a person. And that was the one thing that people were really, really trying to tell us about. It's like, we want to be seen in this research. And when you've talked to 300 people, there were places that we went to that were in absolutely the back of beyond, people who never engage in any of this kind of work. And I think we really felt that we needed to be able to honour them in what we were doing. So we went back to the drawing board. We got this bit of research, a bit of feedback rather. Kind of that's all right. It's what we kind of right, but it's not really what we want. It's not going to help us. We really want things that are kept simple. We want to keep the cost low. We want to avoid overlap and all those sorts of things. Can you develop something that's simple, that thinks about our whole farm system and make something that opens up conversations about farmer wellbeing? Are there any questions?
And did you get good engagement when you were going out to people? I mean, you've got 300 responses, which is extraordinary.
Yeah.
But was it easy to get in and get those responses from people, or did you have to do quite a bit of?
For a start, it was really hard because people wanted to take a very traditional route. So we had to go through some traditions and get ethics approval. That was a no-brainer. But we had a list of people from our CRM and we cold called, and the results that we had from that were absolutely appalling. The amount of effort that we put in and the responses that we got, it was absolutely dismal. So we took a warm introduction approach and just found key people all over New Zealand and explained to them that we really wanted to be able to connect with people who were representative of who our communities were. And once we did that, I would say that our response rate was more like about 95%. And because of that, we really did get to meet people who said, oh, well, I don't go to anything that's industry good. I don't go to field days. I don't talk to a consultant. I don't go to any of that sort of stuff. But they wanted to sit down and talk to us.
You feel that's quite a big chunk of what's going on out there. The non-engaging percentage is higher than most of us would realise.
Yeah, I think it is a lot higher than most of us realise. But I think also the one caveat is that when we did this work, I knew some stuff then, but as we've gone on, we finished doing a lot of this analysis in 2021. Crikey, I know a lot more now. I wish what I knew now we could take back and apply to the end. So we would say to people, we would want to talk to them for about an hour. I think the longest interview went for nearly 4 hours that I was at. Most of them were about 90 minutes. So for every 90-minute interview, that was about 30 pages of data we had to analyse. Quite a big thing. And I think what was really amazing was that people that we had never met were just so frank and really, really honest. I can really clearly remember one gentleman and his wife that we met. He really wanted to tell us a story about succession, and he wept for about 45 minutes. And, you know, in that moment, we realised you get really good as researchers, you get to know one another incredibly well. So as a team, you realise the best service that you can offer somebody is to show up and to sit down and be really observant. And I think the other thing that we learnt from this work was just all of the bits that we passed on to other people about interview work, and where you sit down at a table, wait for people to sit down, and then you sit down in a place where you get the best from them. You sit across from people. Your interview starts the minute you get into your car or your vehicle, so you start observing what's going on in that district. And it helps me because I'm from a farm. Catherine and I did a lot of interviewing with as an ecologist, but between us, we always had really good questions, and we'd find that people would warm to one person sometimes more than the other. And so we had the kind of understanding between each other that we were really effective as an interview team. But the things that people told us and trusted us with really absolutely blew my mind. Thank you for the question. So what we came to realise was that this thing about resilience and wellbeing, first of all, you have to have a little bit of redundancy. If all of those capitals are full and overflowing, your ability to be able to adapt and adjust are very, very minuscule. So these are things that the intellect, we make this circular on purpose. Again, that if your farm is, if that's going well and your business is going well, generally as a person you're going to be doing well. If you're under the pump and you've got lots of debt, and in sheep and beef farming this year, we're talking about we're down in profits by 53%. So for lots of people, this year is under a lot of pressure. But if your farm is also under pressure as well, we know that people are going to be under a lot of pressure. And then there was another thread that we hadn't thought about, but we came to appreciate that actually the people that sit around you as your support network are also incredibly important. So not just the people in your community, but it's also, is the infrastructure up to date? Is the school still there? Is the squash club still open? Is the gun club still there, or the golf club, or all of those sorts of things where people come to be together? What is the nature of all of those? Plus the people who serve you in your community, are they being helpful, or are they a little bit absent? So this was built as a big feedback loop around here. So we thought that if you improve those integrated components, then you can build an increased capacity to adapt. So even in a year like this where it's been dismal, I live on the east coast of the North Island, and I know that there's been other regions as well, but we've been really, really under a lot of pressure with first cyclones, and this year it's been drought. But our ability to adapt also depends on how healthy these things are. So if we've got the ability to adapt in there, then we've got the ability to deal with climate and markets and regulatory change. And we've also got more options available to recover from unexpected events. That increases our ability to plan for and make improvements across all aspects of our farm systems. And that also allows us to have a clearer path forward and more certainty in our farm management. And the other thing that popped up too, as we were asking questions, is things that were real pride currencies for people. So when we asked people about biodiversity, we got incredibly quirky answers. So that was feedback, just because we can talk about biodiversity in certain circles when we go out and ask people what it means to them. We got some very unusual answers about that. But we came to understand that the currencies of biodiversity were incredibly important to people. So if you've done work and you could see fantails now on the ground, more tui and more kōra in the creek and more eels and all those sorts of things, people loved all of that. And seeing things like clematis that were flowering. So that was a bit of a lesson that we can have big high-level labels for things, but sometimes we have to unpack all of that stuff. And also that if we can get all those things right, then that starts to increase resilience. So I'm telling you all of this because when we get to talk about farm solutions, you'll understand why we got to where we got to. Are there any more questions? Okay, so big lesson was that instead of bundling things up, and as humans we do love to bundle things up and aggregate them and make them really simple, we found we had to go the other way. So while we had these big headings, then we started to unpack them all and what they all meant. And we talked to lots and lots of people about these. We talked to people in Rural Support Trust, the people who had developed Farm Strong. We've got a big list on the next slide actually, so I won't talk about that too much here. But really to start to get to the crux of all of these things that started to make people feel like they were being more resilient and their well-being was in better places, this is the way that we started to unpack that. Any questions? Looks a little bit complicated, but it gets more simple. So this is what we came to. We created this tool. We realised that actually Farm Solution needed to be more than a tool. That was the name came about after we ran an internal competition, and so that was the name that was decided upon, and that was the name that we adopted. So Farm Solution was a Roman goddess of safety, or Salus was a goddess of safety and well-being. What we wanted to do with questions was to make things work in tension with one another, and we've got a bigger example on the next slide, which is easier to see. So instead of people being about a number or a, you know, where do I sit on this as a Likert scale, is like, how do we work with these things in tension? So the questions that we asked for people, first of all, was like, how did you come to be on this farm? And that gave us a lot of insight and intro into future questions. But we also asked people about, what does dystopia look like for you? What do you see in that and why would that be? And we also asked people about utopia. And so the utopia and dystopia are almost represented in here. Biodiversity and soil health were the two other questions we all framed people. So we could get 3 hours sometimes out of just asking those 4 big basic questions. But you know, this is one way that we can use a tool like this. We've got people who are really keen about using it in catchment community groups, so you can get some baseline information for that. We know we can put numbers that sit in behind there that are hidden. And also we are developing a tool for that. So at Beef and Lamb, we've adopted the people element out of all of this work that we did into all of our research programs now. So we've got programs running on fatal eczema and parasite management, and another program in beef genetics. All of those have all of these big people elements built into them now, so that when we are thinking about diseases and things like that, we know that the disease is important, but we know that the people in there are also really important. So we've taken those principles and philosophy and we've embedded that into there. This is a close-up of this, and this is actually an old version. And I wanted to leave this as an old version because what's the most important real estate on any page? The top left-hand corner. When we were testing this with people, you know, we would get so much feedback that was really dire. It was like, oh my goodness me, you have to have all of these support services lined up to like be with people as soon as you start running this with farmers. And I couldn't really understand why that was happening like that. But we realised that that was the most important piece of real estate on the whole of the page. It was the first thing we hit people with is what's your sense of hope, and I'm feeling hopeless and the future is bleak. So that was really a design observation that we needed to flip that. So utopia now sits at the top left-hand side, and we start with farm business or, you know, how's your farm environment going, but still very positive on the top left-hand side. And the interesting thing was that all of people's apprehension about using this sort of melted away a bit, or quite a lot actually. So here's an example of how we can use a scale. We're actually just working through developing an app for that at the moment. We're going to be working with a big community practice and a research program that we've got. And we're going to be using all of those headings that we used in there to help us collect baseline information, and then we can measure as we go through. We've also talked to people in ministries who tend to use that also as baseline information, and it gives them the opportunity to unpack what's going on within their big community so that they can start to understand where they can develop different interventions and where help is really needed. So that's a good news story. Are there any questions about the questions or how that might look?
In terms of the policy machine in mind, let's say the scenario is that they're underinformed about the rural scenario. They're just people worries and ministry of are you selling this to them to enhance their policy process?
Yeah, we are. So one of the ministries two of the ministries that we've had along to a couple of workshops have been very keen to go back and talk to their managers. One of the testing sessions that we ran was with another quite big ministry who runs a lot of policy, which has been quite challenging for a lot of people, particularly in rural areas. So they were really keen to take that back to people, saying, oh, Jackers, while we're thinking about this water stuff, maybe we do need to be thinking about the people stuff as well. So it's taking a little while. I mean, it takes a long time to shift that cog, and certainly there's a lot of people who change jobs regularly in those places. So yeah, it is. But certainly in one of the ministries that we've been working alongside, they have been pushing us quite hard, which is it's quite nice.
And what about the territorial authorities, the environment councils? Yeah, they're everywhere. They have the same, in my view, under-informed approach to their own policy.
Yeah. So there are all audiences that have been on the radar. So we're working through a process at the moment. Some of this pitch is really just to really test with you all again what you see the opportunity for this is and what we can do more. But I think also us understanding who some of those other audiences are that we can target is also really important. So here's all the people that we've developed this tool with. We've worked with Every Woman's Development Trust. They've adopted some of it into our resilient farming business and know your mindset work. We've worked within Beef and Lamb New Zealand. I've just talked about us. We've adopted this as a set of principles into all of our new science and research programs. We've talked to the Farmer Council, so they are all over New Zealand. They have a national conference every year. We did lots of testing with the economic and insights team and also the farming excellence team within Beef and Lamb. So they are really keen on making sure we get this up and going as well. And also the senior leadership team, and we're trying a digital version right now just to make it easy for people to use and make us easier for us to do analysis on the back end. The ministries, we've talked with MPO and their regional and economic directorate. We've talked to the on-farm support team and also the Ministry for the Environment. And here's all the other people down the right-hand side here that we've got feedback from and tested with, which has been good. We've never ever been afraid to have our butts handed to us on a plate if it means that we're going to be making it better. Some of the design stuff, when we've taken work out to test it with people, it's been really rough and ready. So the closest we can get things to a really raw prototype, the better. Because we find if we take things that are really perfect and glossy, then we get really kind of bland feedback. So the more that we can make people feel like they can make a difference to what we're doing, the better the feedback has been.
You're living inside a participant observer study yourself. So if you're setting out to be an agent of change, you've got this great baton that you're carrying. You've found it and it reads well for you. Are you measuring your own success about being an agent of change?
There's probably not too many pieces of work that I do now that haven't been affected through doing this work here.
Yeah.
There's another piece of work called Moving the Middle, which is run by Manaaki Whenua. And I'm involved in a program there called Agents of Change. So it's been really nice to offer insights into that continuously backed by the data and the learning that we've got from this work.
Okay. Let me ask it another way. If you're setting out to be an agent of change, and you've got this, this is a good order here, we will change the world if we just get everyone to accept, put it into practice, adopt it, influence their way of thinking and doing. The policy in Wellington, the machinery of government changes, and in 50 years' time, just everything's sweet, there's no problem. Are you sort of measuring that, your impact over time?
Our own impact. Yes, we do. We've got some return on investment type measurement which has been done, which I can share with you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes it's like pissing into a nor'easter.
Yeah, it is.
When you go to walk the streets of Wellington and
yeah, totally.
It all changes, people come and go,
yeah,
etc.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So this program here, when we had a research organisation that measured the impact, so they created impact statements for us as we started the program and then did a measurement after the program. So Farm Soluce on its own had the highest net present value out of all of the projects that we did inside Hill Country Futures, and that dollar amount was $75 million worth of impact back into the organisation. They found that the whole program went from 11 to 1 to 13 to 1 if they use these tools from Hill Country Futures. So that's $13 return on every dollar invested. And also that we can make improvements of 18% for people's physical and mental health, that we could create better health for land by increased health of land by 13%, and resilience to weather and climate events by 9% from the use of this tool, which has been, that was really gratifying, because that $75 million was a really big number. So that helps us to sell the story of what we've been doing as well. For people who are sitting in the room and saying, crikey, well, what do I do? Do I have to use this? And every time I'm sitting with somebody, do I pull out this big questionnaire and run that through with people? Really what we're saying to you is that everybody in the room has got the ability to, if people need your time, if you can create the time and genuinely show up with some sincerity, that is the best thing that you can ever do for people. Question?
Yes. Dumb question.
No.
Then evaluation, so I get all that. What's the impact? It's questionnaire. So is the impact the awareness? What's the result of the outcome? So is it the awareness of using that questionnaire? You're aware of the factors, so you have the agency in order to make changes on your own system, or is it because there's a lot of additional support around the pen that would be needed, and whether that's access to that pen?
Yeah.
What's the actual results that are the impact?
That is a really good question, and I can't answer that for you right here, right now. I don't have all of the background that they put in there. I really wanted to be able to articulate that number was it was a significant number in comparison to the rest of the program. But one of the things that we did do was make sure that we offered people the opportunity either to be trained on in their roles as rural professionals. As you're going around in the time that it has a cup of tea, what could you do that can make a really positive difference for people? If you are the director of a company and you are sending people out onto the road, what might you need to be aware of? If you are beef and lamb and you're putting programs together, what can we be aware of that can improve people's well-being? The other point I really want to make is that every time it's so easy to go to the dystopian end of well-being. But what we found through all of these interviews was that so often people had lots and lots of really good news to tell you about, but we hardly ever create the opportunity for people to do that. And I think that is a benefit, was just absolutely massive, to give people the opportunity to think about what they had done, sometimes intergenerationally, or what they've done over 20 or 30 years. Was massive. We could sit there and say, what was it like when you first tuned up? And they said, oh, it was like this, and there you go. And at the end of it, they had this realization going, man, we've done heaps. We've done so much. And that was the ability, that was what these sets of principles did for people. And I'm really happy to go back and dig into that report to more accurately answer your question, but I have to be really honest and say, out of all of the work that was done on that piece of reporting, I don't know the absolute details of that right here, right now. Any other questions? Where to next? So this seems to be something that sits in constant beta, so we're always making it better. This afternoon I was sitting down and doing some review of people who wanted to be able to integrate this into their work, so giving feedback on that. So that's great as far as adoption goes. We are working with people all the time to find out how we can keep this going as a philosophy, how we can help train people, how we can set it up as a survey instrument, how we can start to build the breadth of what well-being and resilience are as a set of principles for lots and lots of people. And so if you are here and you want to be able to have a talk about this some more, then we'd be really glad to do that. We don't have our elbows out on this whatsoever. We don't feel as though we own Wellbeing. We really don't. If people want to take one or two of these things and make it work for them, then absolutely go for it. That was the whole basis of what we were doing. Catherine and I don't have any ownership of this whatsoever. We really think that this is something that genuinely belongs to everybody who took part in the work that we did. Any more questions? So, sorry, go ahead.
It was really delayed and up. So do you see this as a tool that farmers are using on farm for their own wellbeing chicken, or that the rural professionals and consultants are using with their farmers to build wellbeing outcomes?
And there could be an opportunity for people to be able to create wellbeing outcomes if you're from some of these different organisations. And I know certainly when we've got people coming down the driveway, there's a few industries that have a big chest poke about 4% profit year on year, please. And so if we can help educate further back up the line, that actually there's a real people element to that as well, that would be great. But I think really is for people coming down driveways, it would be principles first, that if you can spot something, we talk about it like it's first aid. Everybody inherently knows in the room that if you see somebody and they've got a twisted ankle, that we know really generally if you can get some ice on it and perhaps give up rugby for the week or whatever you're playing, that would be great, just a bit of rest. This is the same thing. This is the area that we're playing in. We're not playing at clinical psychology levels or where the Rural Support Trust lives. We really want people to be able to understand where your circle of competency is. Just like first aid, you don't do a first aid course and see somebody having a heart attack and think, awesome, I can got first aid, so we'll have a go at some open heart surgery. That's not what this is. This is really very low grade. This is keeping everybody safe through the process. And certainly as we develop tools for this, it's like, okay, here's where you identify your circle of competence, and this is where you know you need to bring somebody else to help. Just like we do with physical health, we know, you know what you can do for somebody else with plasters and bandages and things like that. But we also recognise that when you get to the edge of your competency, either recommend somebody goes to the doctor or you dial the ambulance and wait for the ambulance to come. That's our job as people when it comes to human wellbeing as well. Yeah.
Supplementary question. In one of your previous slides, you had trialling it over 7 years in a digital tool. How often are you collecting data sets, and is it from the same person, or are you continuously collecting?
We'd want to be able to collect data from the same people. So in that context, we are trialling that within a community of practice. And so over that 7 years, we want to be able to measure where people are as a baseline, and then as we work with different interactions and different bits of product and research going into the technical side of that, how that's affecting people's resilience in there.
And will you do that like after certain touch points, or is that like like biannually 3 months, like set data collection?
We'd really like to be able to do it at the beginning, and then after 2 years, 4 years, and then it's 7 years.
Any more questions, ladies?
What's the funding outlook for your own program?
For this program, well, officially the funding for this is pretty much done. So I'm down here doing this as a volunteer, and at the moment we are working through a process to obtain some more funding to roll it out. But really just to be able to make this available to people. It's been funded by public money, so in our opinion it needs to be out there for public use. Yeah, so we don't see this being run as a licensed program or anything. It's not, there's nothing to do with profit whatsoever.
Farmers being misunderstood, was there a bit of blame in interviews on the media, or was the main with that?
I think it was just sometimes if you've gone back to a home farm, would be one case I could think of where you've taken on high debt. Some of the aspirations that people have in environmental work were massive. It was just that the bank had a bigger call on what you could do with your profit in those early years. And so it wasn't we really wanted people to be able to understand that what can be labelled as apathy sometimes you need to stop and pause and go back and think about that and find out what was happening. So that was kind of like being understood. What's the context that people are working within? It's not necessarily a bad attitude. There might be other constraints out there which stop them from doing certain things.
Yeah, but in general, that's not really something that the media touches on. Is that something that is talked about in interviews at all?
Yeah. So can you ask the question again?
It was on the subject of farmers being misunderstood. I think it was back on the orange.
Yeah.
Chat. In the dystopian section, there's like being misunderstood or greatly misunderstood. There hasn't been much good perception I've seen in New Zealand media represented by farmers.
Yeah.
If so, if that was a part of it, would media focusing on trying to help understand farmers and like journalists trying to interview farmers and actually understand their issues and their side of the story, would that help contribute towards that? And is that like a kind of private sector solution to this problem?
I think there would be a massive help. We've seen so much change that comes through on Country Calendar. So was a lot of focus on every Country Calendar episode about the good work people are doing environmentally, and now I notice there's also a lot of things that people do for their mental health as well. But I think, getting those into everyday forums is the thing. We get a rural news and we get a Farmers Weekly and we get an insert in every Thursday paper about farming all the time. We're not our own key audience. I agree with you. I think we need to be able to get our good stories into the mainstream audience more.
And thank you for your time and talking to us. I'd be really curious to know, for people in the room that have heard about this for the first time, what would be the next step in terms of integrating it into a team or an organisation?
I guess it depends on how you want to use it. So we found that tool, we can either use it as a subjective tool where it can be very conversational and people one-on-one can tell you about what they want you to know, or you can use it as an objective tool. So you could use it as large scale and collect large scale data through that, which you can analyse using quantitative or qualitative analysis. So I guess that's the first step, is understanding in your organisation where would this as a set of principles and philosophies and as a tool create the best support for you. Yeah. Thank you.
Any more questions in the room? So much.
Thank you.
This was really useful. Please join me in thanking Ange for the presentation. Sure, you stick around for a little while for a little bit of a nibble and something to drink. So there is an opportunity to actually catch up with Ange if you were quite nervous to actually do it on public. So you can do that in a moment. We are doing really, we're doing really cool things in Wellbeing. So we have more events coming up. We're looking at Tim Smith talking our excellent series talk about vulnerability and adaptation. We are having Sam Elder here from Orion to talk about our energy future and how we're actually going to do that. And I know that she will talk to us about is our energy future place specific or place agnostic? So therefore, can we, as a rural area, can play a role in that? And then, of course, thank you, Be Social, to us and to each other.